welcome back. It's time to be better, starting with today's Be Better podcast. And you know, for our host, Michael Kurland, that's more than just a tagline to the company he founded. It's a culture that permeates his whole organization, propelling everyone on the team to be better to each other, their customers, and their communities, as well as themselves. So each week here on the Be Better podcast, Michael's going to interview outstanding leaders who are striving to be better in their own personal and professional lives. So let's start being better together with our host, Michael Kurland. Hey, Michael.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Audience, thank you for joining us on the Be Better podcast. I'm very excited today. We have a special guest. He is part of the Be Better culture on a daily basis. My partner in business and my friend and the president of Branded Group, Jon Thomas. Welcome, Jon.
Hey, Mike. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. This is the podcast where I'm going to get to ask you all the questions that I've never had a chance to ask you before, and you have to answer honestly.
Ugh. I'm okay with that.
Well, let's jump right in, Jon. You know, you live the Be Better, mantra with me on a daily basis. It's actually, for those of you that don't know, Jon Thomas coined the phrase "Be Better." So why don't we tell that story real quick?
Sure. So I had moved to New York to work for a company similar to the company that me and Mike own today. And it was a long time ago, and I think Mike had just gotten an extra room in his house, and he took me under his wing and let me be his roommate for a few months while I was looking for a new place. And we were younger then. We would hang out a lot more at the bars. And so when there'd be a couple of nights where maybe Mike would come back making a lot of noise and I'm trying to sleep or what have you, and then it went on like that for a few weeks, and I was just like, come on, man. And he was like, I'm sorry. And then one day he came out and said, I'm sorry I was loud again. I was like, you know what? Don't be sorry, just be better. And we were like, oh, that sticks.
Yeah, but I think where it really spawned though is that we started making a joke out of it, and then it
stuck.
We were working, and we just would say it about work stuff all the time. Hey, let's just be better. We just need to be better. And hey, if we ever start this company, we're gonna be better. So that's where
the phrase came well before the business. We were just saying that, and then like to your point, in the workplace, stuff would actually get serious. Just be better.
Right.
It makes sense.
Well, that leads me to what do you do and why do you do it? You're the president of Branded Group, and for the audience, I'm the sales marketing guru guy. I'm the one that also does the emotional, the HR, and the culture. Jon does the operations, and I can tell you without a doubt, without Jon, we would not be where we are today. He helped take Branded Group to the next level and allowed us to scale up to where we are. So with that intro, what do you do, Jon, and why do you do it?
What is it you say you do here? So, I mean, as far as like a daily basis, like you said, it's a lot of oversight of a few different departments. So primarily it's operations, but it also includes the finance section of the business too. So I kind of act as the oversight and CFO in that regard. And I would say over the last year and a half, that's probably taken up more of my time, as you well know. But day to day, it's just kind of checking all of the little pieces that, make the whole machine work, and making sure that the department heads are going down the same path that our vision has been aligned on to get us where we want to be, whether it's a top line revenue number or whether it's, helping an account grow that you've sold or, your sales team has put in, and just keeping things smoothing and basically making the trains run on time is the way I like to simplify the most.
Yeah. So you that is a Jon Thomas original, making the train. I don't know if it's original to you, but it's something you say over and over again. that you make the trains run on time. But why do you do it, Jon? Why?
Well, for me, my perspective on a business is extreme consistency. So I've found that choppiness in organizations, and I've experienced choppiness in organizations, lends itself to sporadic growth and also completely random downturns. And it's completely lent itself to a sporadic process, right? So there's so many different pieces that go into any business, and people say, "Oh, it's just ops and sales." It's not. It's everything that you've brought to the table, Mike, with the culture and the people, and then getting those people to operate kind of like down the stream that we want them to go. Is that takes a lot of consistency, and that consistency is just what builds an entire organization. So that's why I do it, is because if things aren't running on time, people aren't getting to where they need to be. They're not doing what they need to do, and ultimately, they're not servicing the customer like they need to service them. So I guess I also do it out of
I can see
fear of not getting it done on time.
fear of failure, would you say?
Absolutely.
Did you hear me on that one? Fear of failure?
Yeah, I think I'm getting a little lag. Yeah, definitely failure.
Should we hold up for a second here? We're getting a real bad lag.
Let me ask you. You're the guy that loves.
Yeah.
Let's hold up for 1 second
Is
here.
it
Let
me
me come
or
back.
is it?
I'm getting
is it
a
me or
lot
is
of
it
lag.
Jon?
Yeah, let me come back in here, Michael. We're getting a lot of lag on his end there. His bandwidth is dying out. You're fine, Michael, but
It's me.
yeah. You want to?
I'll come back in.
Yeah, let's try that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the only problem with all these Zoom things. Everybody doesn't have the bandwidth at home sometimes to do these things, or wherever he is.
Yeah.
So you were fine, and then he just started lagging.
Your screen's frozen too.
Oh, really? You want to try going out? You're
Yeah,
not
yours-
frozen on my screen. You're not frozen. You want to come out and?
Yeah, you're like choppy, so I don't know if it's mine. I did have a thing say my internet. I can hear everything fine on the voice, but the video is definitely choppy.
You want to go out and come back in too, and just see what happens?
But I can come out and come back in if you want.
Let's try it here. We'll splice this all together.
Sure, let's give it a shot. All right.
All right.
Yeah.
So
How's that?
is that any better? And you sounded fine before, so it's on your end. And let's see if Jon sounds any better.
Yeah. It's,
Yeah, Jon.
when did it start getting choppy? Because I'm literally like sitting on my router.
I'd say
right when I asked you why you do it, like I said something along the lines of, you're scared of fear of failure.
Fear of
and
failure?
You couldn't really hear me, so we can take it
I
from
could
there.
hear
if
you
want.
fine, but I don't think you could hear me.
that he's got it right.
There was like
yeah.
a lag.
Yeah.
So let's
Okay, is
start.
this
So
better?
yeah, so let's start right back. Let's go back to, since it'll be easier to splice. Let's have Michael ask a question. So why do you do what you do? And you can talk.
Okay.
Let's start with that. So let me
Repeat that
cut
whole
myself
spiel.
out of here, and
Yeah, I mean, whatever you say, no big deal. All right.
so let me
Ready?
count you down here. So in 3, 2, 1.
So you are the president. You keep the trains running on time, Jon. You've said that numerous times in your career to me. It's like a Jon Thomas ingrained in my head original. But why do you do it?
I do it because, realistically for, any business, like we have to get these things done. We have to get people to go in the direction we want them to go in. And a lot of it for me is fear of failure in a big way. Like I've always been pretty driven by that and, that paranoia. And I've actually try to, in a healthy way, encourage that to, our executive team and management staff of, things can seem great one day, but you always need to be kind of looking for the thing that you're missing, because you're always missing something.
You've also instilled in the management team to be on time, similar to the trains running on time. So,
boy, howdy.
Yes. So that leads me to a good segue. You said it's a fear of failure, but what motivates you to be better besides that fear of failure?
Well, I mean, I'm a competitive guy. I think you know that. I don't like to lose. Yeah, just a little old me. But when I first came out here after you had, done the ground up from the business, and, it was time to go through the scaling exercise. I mean, before meeting you, I had never had any aspirations to like own a business or anything. Like, it wasn't in my roadmap. I just wanted to do Excel spreadsheets all day, because why wouldn't you want to do that for the rest of your life? But
so fun.
But I mean, don't forget to touch your pivot tables, buddy.
Forgot it fast as I learned it.
But when I started seeing the success that came from, our collaboration and our partnership and how it could resonate through the business, we started to win more than I had even expected. And when you get that feeling of like, oh, this can work, and people are growing and the business is smoothing out, and you start seeing it, it's a pretty amazing feeling. And that keeps me going a lot.
So the compounded win on top of win on top of win.
Yeah, big time.
Okay, so you're pretty competitive guy, motivated by success and fear, driven by fear. So these are good things to know. I'm just keeping a tally over here. Now I'm going to get into the stuff that you don't like. I'm going to start talking about you and emotional stuff. How are you, Jon Thomas, being better to yourself these days?
These days, I mean, if we're talking quarantine days, I've been making it a point to make more of a schedule, in my day. Because like you've seen in the office, I can get interrupted on a pretty frequent basis. So when I have time to put in a solid like 2 hours straight into something, I love it. But that lends itself to me getting stuck at a screen for a long time, and I forget the time. And there are people that need to be called, and check-ins with the management team, all that type of stuff. So it's easy to get kind of sucked into the computer. So I've been making it a point to like get up, walk around, make some phone calls, like continue the personal touch on a more frequent basis, because you just don't have the luxury of walking by someone's office anymore and being like, hey, what's up? How you doing? Like, how's your day? So that's kind of been an important thing to me, just to get up and move around a little bit.
So let's not just talk about work though. Like, how are you being better to Jon Thomas? What are you doing these days to take care of yourself a little bit, especially during this quarantine? I mean, we've been inside 2 months now. Human contact, seeing other humans is a rarity. Social distancing is a thing. We don't know how long this is going to last. What are you doing to take care of yourself right now? Even before the pandemic started, but in these times, I guess in the last 2 months, what is it besides not work related? Talk to me about that.
I've been actually getting my. I'm a drummer. Been a drummer for a long time, so I've got my practice pads out, and I'm getting my my chops back up on my rudiments and everything through my drums, because I live in a condo. Neighbors are over the age, I think the average is like 70, so I don't think they'd be too keen on me setting up a five-piece.
Probably not. Funny story. One of the first times I ever met Jon Thomas, he alluded to it earlier about when he moved to Long Island. We would go out, we'd have a couple drinks a couple nights a week, and there was this one bar that had open mic night. And I didn't know much about Jon Thomas other than he was, he was a gregarious guy, liked spreadsheets and documentaries. And we walk into this bar, and it's open mic night, and there's a band playing, but it's like, anyone can join. And he literally walks up to the band and says, hey, can I get on drums? And they're like, sure. And I'm sitting here like, who is this guy? And the guy walked up and I don't know what song you played, man, but whatever it was definitely cool. And you jammed out with this band in the middle of the bar. And I was like, that guy's got something. Anyway,
Yeah.
little tidbit. I never forget that story.
I think it was Motown or something. I think it was an Otis Redding song. I can't remember which one though.
They're all so good. They're all so good.
Yeah.
So, you're a big documentary guy. I'm sure you've been watching a lot of Netflix and things of that nature over the past couple of months. What's Jon Thomas curious about right now? What are you into?
This is still about me. I'm not talking about work, right? This is.
I mean, you could talk about both. I think our audience, the Be Better podcast, wants to get to know Jon Thomas, though.
Yeah. So, what I'm doing, just to be better.
What are you curious about?
What am I curious about? Okay. Well, curiosity is like my thing. I'm going to start with outside of work, because you mentioned documentaries. So yeah, I get down on some stuff that I don't understand, and I try to learn it. So I've actually been using a variety of different documentary streaming services like Curiosity Stream. I haven't tried Masterclass yet, but a lot of like quantum physics and a lot of particle theory and stuff like that. Just trying to understand stuff that is just so far beyond, like, I mean, I didn't study physics or anything in school. I'm just fascinated by it. And it really gets me to wrap my head around things that people dedicate entire careers towards just to find like a particle of a particle of a particle. And that just like blows my mind. So I just get wrapped up in that stuff for hours because it's fascinating.
That's great. I actually just read a book by Deepak Chopra, which talked about the same thing. It's not quite physics; it's more like the metaphysics, and he gets into the emotional. And he's a big meditator and emotional guy, and he's talking about how when you really break it down to our smallest atoms and whatever's below an atom, protons and neutrons, I think, and things of that nature, that when you get down to it, it's all just energy. And at the end of the day, we are the same energy as an atom, or whatever smaller than an atom, and how the earth just flows in an energetic way and field. So I thought that was cool, but that probably is not.
No, it's basically the same stuff. I mean, you got gluons and quarks, and then you got Higgs fields. Those things, and you've got different charges of those. I mean,
he was talking about how if I don't know if it was a quirk or whatever, but if you aren't watching it, it won't move, and it only moves when you're watching it because you're directing your energy at it. And
because you're interacting with it. Yep.
Exactly. So
they've actually got a really cool thing. Actually, Einstein theorized it back in the day, and it's called spooky action at a distance. So like, there's always like a quantum entanglement between two particles, and you can put them on opposite ends of the universe. And if you turn one up, the other one's going to turn down at the same time.
Oh wow!
So that kind of defeats the idea of like speed of light connection, because it's connected on different levels. So,
oh, you're blowing my mind right now.
Hey, Curiosity Stream.
So the thing that I'm actually kind of curious about right now is that the government during this pandemic decided to admit that UFOs are real. How do you feel about that, Jon?
So, all right, I have never been a conspiracy theorist at all. Like, that's just not my jam. And you actually turned me on to a documentary on Netflix about that. Was the Paul Lazar guy?
Oh yeah.
The Area 51 guy.
And
it always just struck me as funny every time they had these shows, because that one was narrated like horribly by like Mickey Rourke or something.
It was Mickey Rourke, which
it was so bad.
Let's try and get Tom Hanks. He won't do it.
Yeah.
Mickey Rourke. Yes.
So like, if I believe there's relevance to it, because there's stuff that, the government's working on all the time. And, I wouldn't be surprised if there was some high level crazy stuff that like people just can't know about. I mean, people didn't know about stealth helicopters until we raided Osama bin Laden's compound, right? So it was like, who knows what they're working on. I can, whether there's like little green men in spaceships and stuff circling around, I hope so. Like, that would be cool. If they haven't like destroyed us yet, I think they already would have. So it'd be nice, but I'm not like hung up on the whole idea of like, there's gotta be, believe what was his name? Fox from X-Files.
Wow.
Mulder,
Mulder
Mulder,
and Scully. Yeah. Another show I didn't watch, but so let me ask you, let's talk a little bit about work, because you are, an operational guru in my point of view, and I've seen
Thanks,
it
man.
up close and personal. So, you know, I always say if you're not evolving, you're dying, right? So what is Jon Thomas doing right now? And we've talked about it. You put all these procedures into place, 3 years ago, and then only to tear them down and rebuild them later because they're out of date at a certain point in time. So what are you doing to be better professionally? And what are you curious about in the professional setting in the operational world that's helping you be better?
So curious, operationally, and also more like, again, on finance and accounting and stuff like that is, there's like, so for what we do, everyone's got a different timeline on their dollar, right? So when we get a dollar through the door, or we get a request to do a job that will eventually convert into a check, like hundreds of thousands of things happen, or well, probably hundreds of, maybe just up to 1,000 things happen in between there, depending on the length of job, right? So I've been really curious and kind of chasing this white whale of like the predictive analytic of a job comes in, what type of job, what are the characteristics of it, and how does that job, generally tend to turn into real cash in a bank account. And, I've been working on that for a little while and getting much closer with the help of, as you know, a very good team. And once you can figure something like that out, then you have a very, very good command over your cash flow and the decisions you can make today based off of when things are going to happen tomorrow. So the financial predictive analytics is like really, I've been chasing that one for a while. It's just, we have so many variables in our business that it's a challenge for sure.
So many. It's funny, people, when I talk to other people about what we do, they all think they know it. And then I describe it to them and they're like, oh, that's not even what I thought you did.
Right.
And then they're like, for me, from the sales point of view, it's, hey, you deal with a lot of contracts, right? And I'm like, no, some, but there's some people that they're like, hey, I like you, I'm going to use you guys. And
right.
oh, I don't like you anymore, I'm not going to use you guys. And it's that simple. So yeah,
there's so many things in between all of that, from when a client calls or emails or whatever, and what they want on the other end. And there's so much static that can happen in between, and so many things that can go wrong. And I mean, we said this from the very beginning, we just want to have the most consistently pure, like best deliverable. Our product is service, and that service relies on people. So those people have to be consistent to deliver that level of product that we want to give to people,
Absolutely. Let me ask you this, John. What is it that makes Branded Group, being that you're the president and you run the operations, what makes Branded Group better? What makes Branded Group be better?
I mean, hands down, it's the people. We've got a really, really good crew. And the crew was assembled, by me and you, obviously, and others, but I think we were very cautious about who we were bringing in. We also never let ourselves get to the point where we were hiring people and throwing them to the fire. We were always ahead of the game, and I think that really helped build a better foundation for our people to want to learn and participate in the organization rather than just react to whatever was happening in that day. And over time, that's really resonated because our people are really, really top-notch folks all around. And some of the best I've seen. I've had the good fortune of working with a lot of really, really high caliber people. So that's number one for me.
You're welcome.
And number two, like from an operational standpoint, I guess kind of as almost a tangent off of what I just said is, we've always been very, very cautious to adding too much stress to the organization and creating that caustic, acidic culture of like fear. Like we've always been able to, with the culture side, especially with you, being able to put in things so people know like you are valued here. And also from the operational side and, pushing the jobs, it's letting people know that they make a difference on the jobs and they're just not a robot. that's critical. So that's what really does help us be better. And then all the process and technology that we have working to aid those people in their job is what ultimately results in a better product for us and the customer.
Yeah, you've always had a different mentality when it came to operations. I think you've always been a forward thinker, and you've gotten me to think about operations, which is something that I don't enjoy at all. But the one thing that I always have appreciated that's come from you, and been planted in my mind, is speed. Speed is, everyone thinks perfection or margin, but it's really speed that you can. So talk to me a little bit about that. Why is speed so important for you and for us and the industry?
Well, there's so many levels on the like when you're looking at your balance sheet or your P&Ls, right? And everyone looks at overhead and they're like, wow, overhead's just going to be overhead. My compensation is my compensation. It's only going to go up. And you've heard me say before too, like a lot of times you just get into the habit of just, everyone's just squeezing the water balloon. Whatever you do here, it's going to puff up over here. And whatever you do here, it's going to puff up over here. So I would say that speed was something that I started dialing in on a while ago, because the faster you get a job done, the faster that same person can get to another job, right? And for us, jobs are what we're selling, and that's what we're providing to the client as a service to those jobs. So rather than just tell the person to go faster, the idea was, well, let's get some technology additions and let's have some process improvement to enable that person to make more decisions cleanly and effectively, so they're not just trying to burn through as much work as they can. And let's teach people how to strategize, how to manage their workflow, and that lends itself to speed.
Would you call that efficiencies?
Oh, massive efficiencies, ultimately leading to a faster throughput. I should remember the name of the book right now. You can probably put it in like the description or whatever. There's a really good book on throughput. It's like by Eliyahu Goldratt. I can remember the author's name, but I can't remember the damn name of the book. But that's a really, really good book it was actually built around like production line speed and your bottlenecks and stuff like that. So it just kind of applied that to the service level. And then they did eventually come up with another book. That one was called Critical Chain for project management, to manage your throughput and time. So that's what we chase, is the speed, because more speed with the same quality means one person producing more work, and you don't have to hire somebody.
And also jobs get billed at a faster rate.
Yep, exactly.
So that starts that timeline quicker. That's what I've always hung my hat on. Well, that's fascinating stuff. Operationally, stuff I don't like, but I'm glad we got a little chance to talk about that. What I do want to ask you, though, as we're starting to wrap up here, is what do you consider yourself to be an expert at? And whatever that may be, what is your best advice to our listeners on how to be better at that?
I would say, I consider myself an expert on, creation of process. Hey, don't sleep on them, man. Those have helped us tremendously. But now half the time we don't even use spreadsheets anymore, because we've converted to so many other things, right?
Right. Sorry to interrupt. Continue.
No, it's okay. So I'm an expert on dealing with Mike Kurland.
Sometimes.
But I would say process creation and improvement, and then scaling up, because those are all kind of intertwined for me. But those are probably where I would consider it to be the most, because clearly it's not unlike, being emotionally available most of the time.
So what's the advice on how to scale up to be better at it?
I've said it in a number of different ways, but the biggest thing that I've lived by, and this has been even before Branded Group, just stuff I picked up along the way, but never get married to a process, or never put a process on a pedestal type of thing. Like if you want to scale anything, no matter how small you think the business is or how simple you think it is, you need a solid foundation. That foundation is your process. And if your process if you just think, oh, I put it in place, it's done, that's going to be the best thing that's going to carry me for the rest of the lifetime of the business, you're wrong. and I will absolutely say that you're wrong because everything's changing. So you have to be ready to rip apart anything that you made in the past. Like, you can never ever think that that's the way it is. And there's keystone processes out there like that, they exist, but even those are not off the table for being ripped down and built up again. So you just have to make sure that those processes that you have are not invincible to being improved upon. But before you can do anything else, you have to just kind of prepare yourself mentally to know that I might have made that, one report or that one process that enabled people to operate day by day, but that might get antiquated pretty quick, and you just have to be ready to deal with that.
So you would say your advice is be open-minded and agile.
That's a very succinct way to put it, yes. And don't get hung up if someone that's a junior associate comes up and says, this is really old and stupid, right? It's say, you know what, you're probably right. Let's fix that.
Well, Jon, I want to thank you for being here today. It's been eye-opening. I got to learn about some quantum physics. Didn't think we were going to go there. And appreciate you coming on. And audience, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you guys being a part of our little podcast here, and look forward to speaking with you guys next week. If you want to look up the Branded Group online, it's www.branded-group.com.
That's it for this week's episode. Join us again as we all try and be better here in Orange County's only community radio station, octalkradio.net. There we go. That's how we do it.